If we don't learn to effectively communicate when we have a negative thought about somebody, and that means communicate with ourselves and communicate with the other person, if we don't learn how to handle criticism, and even before that, handle stress, because most of the time criticism is our own stress coming out on somebody else. That's a thing. Like, if we don't deal with that, we're blowing up everything around us, which is not what God wants.
Welcome to another episode of What to Say and How to Say It. Today, we are discussing how to stop criticism from destroying your marriage. Now, I know that criticism is no fun. I don't know that we do it well, but it's a thing. It's a thing the Bible talks about. It's a thing that happens at work. It's a thing that happens at church, and definitely at home with the people we love most. And so today we're going to discuss what that looks like, how we can do it well, and maybe come away with some tips that can be implemented in your daily life. So I have our expert here, Nina Rosner, who will help us kick this off. Nina, you have some research around what criticism does to relationships. Can you share that with us?
Well, the Gottman people, University of Washington, they're the gold standard double-blind test people. And they cite a gentleman named Neil Jacobson's research. And they talk about how stress management, the lack of managing your stress, is actually the most important factor in making progress in maintaining and developing intimacy in a relationship. And the Gottman people are also known for saying, talking about the four horsemen of the apocalypse, of which criticism is one.
Right.
So that's pretty important. And even Dale Carnegie, back in the dark ages, his first principle was don't criticize, condemn, or complain. And so we know intuitively that criticism is not useful most of the time in the way that it's delivered. We need to have critical minds and that we discern good from bad. But the way that we communicate needs to be different than just the garbage in our heads. And we're so defensive as a culture that this can become a real problem. If we don't learn to effectively communicate when we have a negative thought about somebody, and that means communicate with ourselves and communicate with the other person. If we don't learn how to handle criticism, and even before that, handle stress, because most of the time criticism is our own stress coming out on somebody else. That's a thing. Like, if we don't deal with that, we're blowing up everything around us, which is not what God wants.
Yeah. So I guess the first thought that comes to mind is, am I managing my stress? How do we know if we're doing that? I mean, we are all irritable. We're all busy. We all have 10 windows open at once. What maybe is a good way to just become aware of ourselves? Because I know for me, I'm a mom, I work, I do ministry stuff like this, fun stuff. I have, different roles, wife, friend, daughter, sister. So it can get to the place where it's overwhelming, but everything's important to me. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. How do you manage your stress?
I used to be a great worrier. Like, stay up half the night with all the racing thoughts, half panicked about everything that could go wrong. I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
But I'm real familiar with that feeling of overwhelm. I remember when one of my kids was 9 and he had chronic headaches. It was left over from all of us getting really, really sick. And I'm sitting on the couch one day and I've got his head in my lap and I'm stroking his head and I've got a washcloth on it. And I've got these 2 classes I'm starting to launch at this huge, 50,000 member church here in Cincinnati. And I'm I'm stressed, I'm panicked,
Mm-hmm.
and I am thinking about marketing and worrying about my customers when I need to be fully present with this 9-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the ways that I've managed stress is to recognize, first of all, recognize that feeling of overwhelm, the little bit of panic that starts in just as it licks around the periphery of my experience. As soon as I get that, I go, whoa, 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 what needs to go? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun to say. Whoa, 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 what needs to go? Let's make a song. Anyway, I dropped the classes. And I just called the church. I said, I love you guys. I want to do this later. I've got some personal life stuff. And no, that's not always the easiest or possible solution. For me, it was because I was in charge. And
Mm-hmm.
I made that hard decision to put that margin in my life so I could be with my son while he was dealing with this illness. So knowing your values, your priorities, number
Mm-hmm.
one, and then making hard decisions around that.
Yeah.
That was a brutal choice to make, but it had to be made.
Yeah.
Um,
Did
the
you
other,
notice?
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask, did you notice a difference once you made that adjustment in
Oh,
how you showed up in your relationships?
yeah, overwhelming relief.
Okay.
Because I went from being critical of myself and this kid who was just being a kid who was sick. I'm critical to myself. How come you can't handle all this? Critical
Yeah.
to him. How come you're complaining? To overwhelming relief. And then I was, once again, a good mom. I got rid of the cortisol. I was able to be fully present with him. And I didn't feel the guilt and the torn in half thing.
Yeah.
And this is an unpopular thing to say, by the way. I'm going to say it anyway. But when you look at caring for kids and being a hot dog corporate wise, it's hard to do both. And I like what the CEO of Pepsi Cola said years ago. She said, and this was back when she had a 10-year-old. She said, I'm not fully present for
Yeah.
her. I'm a great CEO, or I
Mm-hmm.
can be a great mom. I can't be great at both.
Right.
So, and that's a reality that we need to acknowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And women care more about that, I think, than men do. Because men look at their role, not all of them, but a lot of, and more dads are becoming more involved. The data's in, this
Yeah.
is not as stereotypical as it used to be. And thank God for that. But the ones that typically traditionally have taken care of the kids are the moms. And
Mm-hmm.
it's because we have more oxytocin.
Mm-hmm.
We have that bonding hormone like constantly flowing through us through eye contact. So we feel that burden of caring for others, especially our children, more deeply, more quickly than the men do. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just wiring, but it's not a popular thing to say, but it
Yeah.
is true,
Yeah.
you know? And
Yeah.
I think there's a way to do both, but maybe not in the same season be
Yeah.
amazing at both. And so you have to make sacrifices. You may not want to go for partner, while you're raising kids.
Right. Not when they're 2 and 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. And I think women are also becoming more aware of that as well. I think that's a conversation that's happening more and more. And we want to be our best. We want to show up our best in whatever role that we're in. And so having, like you said, the priorities in line, recognizing where you might need to cut back, in some area so that you're not as critical and as, stretched as you have been is key to showing up well. So I want to do a quick plug-in for our listeners and just kind of remind them that we do have a free e-booklet on our website, greaterimpact.org. And we have been really working hard to narrow in on those couples, those Christian couples who have been to the workshops, seen the therapist, read the books, and they're still stuck in conflict. So if you're interested in learning more, check out our website. And download it. We think it'll help you out. All right, back to criticism. So today we want our listeners to walk away with how to do this well, how to not criticize, but also how to receive criticism well. I know that we've also had a a podcast on telling the truth and how to do that in love. What if you're on the other side of the table and you're getting the criticism and you're receiving that feedback that's not so pleasant? Mm-hmm. What's the what to say there? Because
it's also a what not to say,
or right? What not to say. There you go. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if my stress level is low, which is the majority of the time, thankfully, I can respond to that pretty well. And it's usually with a question. And I most of the time I'll completely ignore whatever you statement was just, javelin thrust at me, and ask a question like, what's going on with you right now? It's not like you to be so, I don't know, something. And I'm vague because I don't want to, let me pour gasoline on your fire and say that you're aggressive and angry, no, it's useful. No. But if I'm in a good place, I can usually ignore what was just launched at me, not take offense, and then ask a question about what's going on with the person. And if they don't get it, then I'll ask for them to say what they're saying in a way that's not injurious. It might even sound something like, hey, I love you. Can you try that again? As if you actually care about me. And I'll laugh a little bit and smile at them. And I might say, can you try that again and use I language? Because I really want to know how you're feeling. I don't want to know what you think is in my head. Can we try this again? And I it's surprising to me. I mean, some of our audience is probably going, well, I could never do that. You know what? I used to think that too. It's not true. When you ask for what you need in a relationship, oftentimes you can get it. If you do so in a way that's respectful and not aggressive back, if it's not reactionary. A lot of times when I don't respond well, because I'm not perfect at this stuff. When I don't respond well, it's usually because of something that's going on inside of me. And my goal at that point is to shut it down quickly. And honestly, it is revolving around stress. And one of the best ways, and you can Google how to deal with your stress, how to manage stress, but it's one of the most important factors, individual stress management, most important factors in handling and creating good relationships. And I find exercise, and I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on TV, so check with yours. But I find that, hard physical labor or exercise helps me channel some of the, or get rid of, whatever cortisol's in there. And like when I first started the ministry and I quit my job, it was part-time and whatever, but it was a lovely little income. And I went to this very expensive hobby, Greater Impact, back 17 years ago. And what would happen is I would get too many plates spinning, that feeling of overwhelm would start, and I'd just go out for a run. And I would run and clarity would come, usually after 3 or 4 miles. I mean, and I would push my body to click into that, flow space and be listening to God, listening to worship music. And it would really, really help. And there's a ton of things, deep breathing, prayer, all of that really helps. Solving your problem helps, and making those hard decisions or whatever. But, sometimes if you can't sleep, get up and write down all the stuff you're worrying about so that you can deal with it the next day. That will help as well. But when we're not doing great and we get criticism launched at us, and that first thing we want to do is not criticize back. And that's the temptation. And that's where Satan lives. So we're interacting with evil, and we're actually feeding evil and being evil in that moment. Not that we're not saved. I'm not making theology here. You know what I'm saying, though? It's just not useful.
Yeah, no, it makes so much sense. And I think the trick that the enemy does use is that, we think it's about us, and it's really not about us. It's about the thing that we're stressing about, and we get in our feelings and take it personally. But if we're taking care of ourselves, because this is what I'm hearing, if we're managing our stress, getting our sleep, exercising, chances are we're not as easily triggered, and we can digest hard things a lot.
Yeah.
easier. So maybe not spin 10 plates, maybe spin 8 plates instead. And, that feeling of offense will just kind of fall away. I do have a question. I had a situation where a family member, someone I love dearly, had sent me a text message, and it was, I would say, criticism wrapped up in a bow, right? And it was an indirect statement that I pretty much read through the lines, right? With, and this is a repeat offender. So, it's not something that hasn't already been addressed. What do you do in situations where that criticism continues and you've already kind of said stop, they're not stopping, and you want to change the dance a little bit, So, I will say this before you give me your expert response. The situation did resolve itself. The person ended up apologizing.
Nice.
But it's one of those things where I'm like, God, I hope this doesn't come up again. Like, you know what I mean?
So what facilitated the apology?
Well, I let the person know, I didn't appreciate that this was being brought up after so many times. And I was aware because what they were saying was true. But I didn't need to be told over and over again, kind of thing. And I didn't feel good saying that. But I felt it was necessary. So I don't know if it'll happen again. It may happen again, but maybe that's the part where I just have to trust God and let go. I don't know.
I think you handled it perfectly. I think you answered your own question.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
I think the issue here is you didn't feel good telling them the truth. Like, who does, right? Who likes to give hard truth feedback, right? Nobody, but you did. And that's what you do with stuff like that. And you had a situation with somebody where I thought they're being indirect about something, and it was critical. And I just point blank asked them, when you said ABC, did you mean XYZ? And they looked at me like I had 3 heads, and I was wrong. And that's such an exciting thing. To most of the time, when we think we know what somebody else is saying, unless it's like your situation with the repeat offender thing, where they've done the thing over and over again, most of the time we're wrong about what other people are thinking. And so it's better to do what you did, be direct. Whether it applies to the repeat or whether it's just asking the question, did you mean this when you said that? So hats off to you. I don't know if you can add to anything to that.
Okay. All right. Well, let's hope it doesn't come up again. But yeah, I guess I know what to do now. You're right.
You do.
All right. So I have come away with several things in addition to what I've applied in my situation. Is there anything else you want to add to this conversation?
Yeah, I think the point here is that good relationships are hard. They're hard work. They take time, they take effort. Everybody wants the easy way out. I'll just smile and it'll all be fine. And the harder thing to do is to tell the truth, to deal with your stress, to make sure you get 9 hours or 7 or whatever it is you need a night of sleep, to eat right, stay hydrated, and not exhaust yourself. It's hard to make those choices consistently. It's hard to be direct, but you're not going to have good relationships unless you do it. There is no easy way to good relationships. It's work. And so if you're willing to put the work in, you're going to reap what you've sown. And guess what? If you're not, you're going to reap that too. So that's kind of the takeaway. You're going to reap what you've sown.
Excellent. I love that. Well, you've just summarized the episode. If you're interested in learning more about how to do this, how to get unstuck in conflict, check out our other episodes on our Greater Impact channel. Thanks for hanging out with us.